Hi, and welcome to SEO Lesson number 2, continuing with problem statements and beginning strategies. Okay, as I mentioned in Lesson 1, we always begin our SEO projects with basic research, and the first step is to examine the market for the purpose of developing market segments or clusters. In the old days, you would hire a marketing company and maybe a couple of private investigators to do this. But with the advent of the internet and its growing popularity worldwide, market research can be had in a fraction of the time it used to take. Much more important, you can drill down to exactly what the market wants by cutting out the middlemen and examining exactly what people are searching for today. This is because people no longer go to the library or newsstand for information. Nowadays, people turn to the internet to find out information on a myriad of topics. When conducting this research, we always begin with a seed word. A seed word can be likened to an idea and usually takes the form of a one or two word phrase. The reason we start with this seed word is because we want to look at the macro market. In other words, how are people searching using a specific seed word? Once this seed word is established, you observe that several words, terms, or phrases may surface over and over again. These are called keywords. And there are two basic types of keywords, short tail and long tail. The short tail keywords are general in scope and may include something like dog breed or dog training as an example, while more specific keywords or long tail keywords may appear as longer phrases such as large dog breeds or small dog breeds. And in some cases they'll even include questions such as how to house train a pet dog. Once you have developed your list of keyword phrases, you will need to do two more things. The first thing is to identify the total market penetration. Most keyword tools allow you to do this by providing you with a count on how many times that particular keyword has appeared in a search engine result page during the last 180 days, in some cases within the last 24 hours, and in all cases using a sampling technique. These keyword trackers will actually estimate how many times that phrase is going to appear during the next 24 hours. If the total market penetration justifies moving forward, then you will want to group or cluster similar phrases together. This is accomplished using a spreadsheet and a little common sense. You are not limited by how many different ways you can cluster your market. I usually begin with a general cluster by grouping like terms together. For example, dog training or dog breeds or dog owners may form specific clusters. I then add another cluster column to my spreadsheet that will further subdivide this cluster or segment. For example, under dog training I might use housebreaking, playing games, hunting, seeing eye dogs, or other subcategories that help further define my market. Finally, I always add a column that allows me to cluster on action words. And some of the common action words I use are who, what, when, where, and how. Now, the purpose of clustering on action words is to identify in what context people are searching for your information, and it will actually provide you with the first clue on how to position your marketing effort. Once you've clustered the basic data, it is now time to sort it. And you can easily do this with most spreadsheet programs. What you are looking to accomplish here is to actually group similar searches and the estimated search results together for the purpose of identifying the most profitable and most active market segments. You will be looking for long-tail specific problem statements that are producing a reasonably high volume of searches. And generally speaking, even if a problem statement only produces 10 searches per day, you can still position a web page to solve those 10 problems. And if you do, you can expect to gain a higher percentage of sales from those 10 searches. The next step, after you've clustered and sorted, is to begin your competitive research. And we'll do this by actually entering the real problem statements provided to you in your prior research into the search engines, and then identifying who or what actually appears on the SERP page. To keep the intelligence manageable, I usually only concentrate on the first page of the SERP, and more specifically, I usually only look at the top 8 page rankings. So again, the steps to competitive research are to enter your problem statements into a search engine, identify your page 1 results. You'll want to write down some basic information like the URL, the title, and the description tags. And then you want to take a visit to each of the sites and just kind of nose around a little bit. The best thing to do here is to either develop a worksheet that provides a place to enter the missing data in a logical format, or go right to a spreadsheet and enter the pertinent information into the spreadsheet. And there are a number of things that you can track for the purposes of your campaign, but I always start with basic contact information followed by content information. It's important to understand that any web page is developed or viewed in two manners. One way is by the actual person, i.e. the human interface, who's looking at the website, and typically it's what you see is what you get. The other manner examines what does the search engine see, and both ways are important to a successful SEO campaign. And as I mentioned a minute ago, there are two ways in which content is examined, and as an SEO consultant, you've got to consider both methods. After I've collected the basic data that is common to all sites, I spend a few minutes examining sites as if I were a prospective customer, and I'll look for long download times, load times. I want to see how easy it is to navigate the site. I'm interested in if they're providing any meaningful content, and I want to see how simple their buying process is. I make notes about this, and I've actually developed a worksheet that assists me with staying on track by listing the most important things a site should be examined for, and I use a simple grading method that allows me to build even more competitive research. Just remember, it's all about knowing as much as you can about your market segment. Now, in summary, I examine each of the listed processes above, and I assign a pass or fail assessment on each point. Specifically, did they pass or fail the ease of navigation? What about their use of colors, fonts, and images? Is their site easy to understand? And how relevant is it to the problem statement? And do they actually provide a solution to the problem that I was looking for? These are important. And this is where all your efforts begin coming together. As we answer these questions, we're going to begin to examine exactly how your competitors are responding to the problems posed by their market. You'll quickly begin to see missed opportunities and underdeveloped solutions, and you'll also see what price points are successful and which competitors are doing a better job. This is an important step because, as you will see in future lessons, the information you develop here can assist you in upselling your client additional services such as joint venturing and affiliate services, and in some cases even copywriting. Now, I know that we've covered a lot of ground on basic SEO and the research involved, and if you decide to skip any of these steps, you will do your client and ultimately yourself a great disservice. Likewise, don't forget that the data you have developed is for your own internal use. If you decide to, you can always offer to sell this intelligence to your client, but just don't violate any non-disclosure agreements, and certainly don't violate any ethics by providing information about your client to others. In other words, the research you've developed becomes the property of your company and not your client, unless your client has paid you for this research. Finally, by spending a little time up front on the research, you can predict and guarantee the success or failure of any SEO project, which will in turn increase your reputation in the marketplace. Just remember that when you're complete the research, you should have a file on each competitor that contains all of the previously mentioned information. And you'll want to sort this information in a spreadsheet based on relevancy and similarities. In our next lesson, we're going to put it all together, and we're going to develop a strategy. And from this strategy, we'll implement a plan with a systematic approach to developing the basic intelligence. And we're going to cover a little bit more about what we've just talked about in greater detail, and we'll start developing our strategies. We'll implement this basic plan, and we'll begin with basic strategies and tactics that can increase your client's internet relevance. So, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. And you can always find me here at the iSaleswriter.com. Thank you.